from the threshold and walked out sword in hand. By this time the soldiers had reached the house. They were taken by surprise at seeing Muslim emerging from the door. Like an enraged lion, the lane was so narrow that 2 horses could not come up abreast. This gave Muslim the best opportunity for single combat. Though he was on foot and the soldier opposite to him was mounted, he possessed the prowess which was the heritage of Ali's family. One after the other the soldiers were tasting the sword of this warrior and falling down from their horses. In the process they were getting crushed and trampled under the hoofs of horses of their own men. The leader of the band of soldiers, who had discreetly kept himself behind his men, sent word for more men. Though more and more soldiers were pouring in, the topography of the scene of this street battle was such that they could not attack en masse. Heads of enemy soldiers were falling like 9 pins. Hours passed but still Muslim was fighting his defensive battle most courageously. When Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad's couriers, who were bringing to him the news of the fight, informed him that Muslim was giving a fight the like of which had not been seen since the days of Ali, the Caliph, he got infuriated. He tauntingly asked his generals how many thousands of warriors they needed to capture one solitary person. One of them angrily retorted to him that he was forgetting that the person to be captured was not an ordinary home-keeping youth or shopkeeper but a renowned warrior of the house of Ali. He even suggested that if Ubaydullah had no confidence in the generals, he could himself demonstrate his skill with the sword by offering combat to Muslim. This suggestion scared the wits out of Ubaydullah. He, of all people, knew what it meant to cross swords with Ali's nephew. Swallowing the taunt, he replied, "My good general, I fully know what it means to fight with a person so desperate who finds himself at bay. Instead of letting our men die by his sword in such large numbers, why cannot someone adopt some stratagem to make him leave his vantage position so that it may be easier to attack him from all sides?" This suggestion appealed very much to the cowardly soldiers of Kufa. After some consultations amongst themselves, they decided to send soldiers to the top of the roof of an adjoining building and from there to hurl stones, burning embers and missiles at Muslim. It did not take them long to carry out their strategy. With showers of arrows, stones, fire and missiles, Muslim was so much wounded that he decided to give up his vantage position. He charged on the soldiers in front of him and they fell back. He went forward, wielding his sword, and in the process, sending those who were within its reach to the perdition and doom that they merited. Once again hasty councils were held among the captains of the army. Someone suggested that, since Muslim was now desperately moving forward, a trench could be dug on the road and covered up with straw so that it was completely camouflaged. The idea was to trap Muslim as he marched forward. It was realized that, without such subterfuge, Muslim could not be killed or captured without sacrificing the cream of the army. The treacherous ruse proposed by Ubaidullah's mercenaries worked as planned. While rushing on and wielding his sword dexterously, Muslim fell into the trench. Now those who were avoiding coming within the reach of his sword swooped down on him. With gushing blood, Muslim could not regain his feet. He toppled over and lay unconscious in the trench. It was now a matter of minutes to capture him and soon he was chained and bound. When Muslim regained consciousness, he found himself a captive. His wounds had accentuated his thirst. The dawn was now breaking and the call for prayers was raised in the mosques of Kufa. Muslim requested his captors to give him some water to drink and for ablution. Instead of acceding to his request, they mocked and jeered at him. Muslim was extremely surprised and pained to see that the people of Kufa, who were claiming to be the followers of the Prophet were flouting the injunctions of Islam for kindness to all in a helpless predicament. Little did Muslim know that these same people would behave with utter callousness and beastliness towards Hussein and his children in the near future. Before being marched off to the court of Ubaydullah, Muslim was paraded through the streets of Kufa with heavy chains on his hands and feet. The people of Kufa, who only a few days before were vying with one another just to have a glimpse of him, were now watching him from their windows with perfect equanimity, as if he was an utter stranger to them. Some devils amongst them were hard-hearted enough to pelt stones at him. When Muslim was presented before Ubaydullah, he stood erect with dignity. The governor asked him whether he knew the fate that awaited him and his master Hussein ibn Ali. With utter disdain Muslim replied, "O mercenary of Yazid, I do not care what you do to me, but I do not like to hear your cursed tongue mentioning Husayn's name." Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad felt crestfallen at this bold rebuke of Muslim. With intention of creating an impression of his magnanimity on the people who were gathered in his court, he said to Muslim, "According to the age-old Arab custom, I want you to mention your last desire before you are beheaded, so that I may fulfill it." A glint of hope came into Muslim's eyes. Could he take this man at his word and ask him to send the message that he wanted to be conveyed to his master? Like a drowning man who catches at a straw, Muslim decided that, if at all, this was his only chance. He immediately replied, "Ubaydullah, if you are true to your word, fulfill my last wish and send a message to my master Imam Husayn, asking him to go back to Medina and abandon the idea of his visit to Kufa." Ubaydullah had never expected this request from Muslim. He had thought that perhaps Muslim might request him to spare the lives of his two young sons when they were captured, as they were sure to be. For a while he was nonplussed. He was at a loss what to say. He knew that he could not fulfill this wish of Muslim without incurring the displeasure of Yazid, but to decline this request would betray him in his true color. His crooked mind did not take long to find a solution to this problem. He beckoned to his executioners to take Muslim to the top of the government house and to behead him. He immediately dismissed his court and hurried back to his apartment. When the sword of the executioner was swaying over Muslim's head, his last thoughts were with his master, Husayn, whom he had loved and cherished more than anything in life. His only regret was that till the end he could not do what he wanted most, to warn Husayn, against the treachery of the people of Kufa. As the sword fell on his neck, he silently muttered a prayer to God to so ordain that Husayn might come to know of the happenings in Kufa. This was the last prayer of the brave warrior, who stood steadfast in death as in life. Merciful God did not allow Muslim's last prayer to go in vain. He who listens to the prayers emanating from the hearts of sincere devotees like Muslim, enabled one witness to the ghastly enactments of that day, who had some sparks of faith in him, to go riding out of Kufa at the earliest opportunity. He reached the camp of Imam Husayn, a few days after Muslim's martyrdom. He conveyed the sad tidings to Husayn, who wept bitterly as if his heart would rend. He called the young daughter of Muslim, who was traveling with him, and told her that henceforth she should regard him as her guardian. He gave one pair of earrings to her and one to Sakina. When the messenger asked him whether he was turning back and returning to Medina in view of what had happened to Muslim, he replied, "I am going forward, to meet my destiny, to fulfill the purpose of my life. My death is beckoning to me, and so there is no question of my retracing my steps." 1. Muslim ibn Aqil had taken 2 of his sons to Kufa with him. The older son was called Muhammad and the younger Ibrahim. Both were under the age of 10 years. When Muslim ibn Aqil realized how dangerous a threat Ibn Ziyad was, he called for Qadi Sharai and handed over his 2 sons to him. Qadi Sharai kept the 2 boys in his house until the martyrdom of Muslim ibn Aqil. After the death of Muslim ibn Aqil, Ibn Ziyad issued a warning saying that anyone who was aware of the whereabouts of the sons of Muslim ibn Aqil and did not inform him would be put to death. On hearing this, Qadi Sharai went to the sons of Muslim ibn Aqil. He showed them affection and kindness as he shed tears. The boys asked him, "Why are you weeping?" Sharai replied, "Your father has been mercilessly killed." The children cried in grief, "O father! O exile!" After Sharai had consoled them, he informed them of Ibn Ziyad's threats against them. Hearing this, the children stopped crying out of terror. Seeing this, Sharai said, "Do not be frightened. You are the apples of my eye. I will not allow any harm to come to you. I have arranged for you to be in the care of a trustworthy person who will see to it that you are taken back to Medina." Sharai called for his son Asad and gave him the following instructions: "News has come to me that a caravan is preparing to depart for Medina. Take these children and hand them over to the trustworthy person who will see to it that they reach Medina safely." Sharai kissed the 2 boys and gave them each 50 dinars. Then he bade them farewell and handed them over to his son Asad. In the darkness of the night, Asad carried the 2 boys in his arms until he was a few kilometers outside Kufa in order to meet with the caravan. However, the caravan had set off. Before they arrived, the dark shapes of the rear of the caravan were barely visible in the distance. Asad bid the two orphans of Muslim ibn Aqil farewell and told to run after the caravan until they caught up with it. Under no circumstances were they to stop before they had reached it. In the darkness of the night the two orphans started running through the desert towards the caravan. However, tiredness overcame them, and they paused for a while. It was at this moment that an inhabitant from Kufa happened to be passing. He saw the two boys and recognized them as being the orphans of Muslim ibn Aqil. He seized them and brought them to Ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad summoned the jailer and handed the two orphans over to him. The jailer was a person by the name of Mashkar, and he was among the lovers of the household of the Prophet S. When Mashkar learned of the identity of the two boys, he treated them with great kindness and affection and brought them food and water. Finally, in the middle of the night, Mashkar decided to free the two boys. He gave them his ring and instructed them to go to Qadisiyah where they would find his brother. He told them to give the ring to his brother who would then assist them to get to Medina. When news of Mashkar's freeing of the boys was given to Ibn Ziyad, he ordered him to be given 50 lashes. Mashkar died as the sentence was being carried out. On the same night Ibrahim and Muhammad, the sons of Muslim ibn Aqil, left Kufa and started their journey towards Qadisiyah. They walked all night. However, due to the darkness and the fact that they did not know the way, they found themselves still on the outskirts of Kufa in the morning. The frightened boys saw a palm grove and went to it. There they hid themselves on top of a date palm. An Ethiopian maid came to the palm grove to drink some water from a pond underneath the tree in which the children were hiding. As she knelt by the pond, she saw the reflection of the two children in the water. The maid quickly looked up at the tree and saw the young boys concealed in it. She treated them with kindness and gentleness and took them to her mistress, who was the wife of Harith ibn Urwa. As soon as this woman saw them, she put her arms around them and asked them who they were. They replied, "We are from the family of the Prophet and are the sons of Muslim ibn Aqil." When she learned of their true identities, she showed them greater affection and embraced her maid in joy. However, she warned her not to inform her husband Harith about the boys because she knew of his evil disposition. After the boys had eaten and gone to bed, Harith returned home in a state of rage. When Harith's wife asked him of the reason for his anger, he replied that he had been in search of the two